Let me turn now to the chair of the Republican National Committee, Reince Priebus. Welcome back to Meet the Press.
Hey,
Chairman.
good morning, David.
I want to pick up on this point, on this comparative nature of this campaign.
Sure.
Campaigns are tough. They've already gotten tough. How do you respond to Mr. Alexrod on the moral core question for Mitt Romney?
Well, for the first time I've seen David tongue-tied. I think he's living in an alternative universe here. You know, what this race is going to come down to, David, are a couple things. One, the president made some promises. He made some pretty big promises, and you talked about them. He made some promises in regard to the debt, which he didn't fulfill. He made some big promises in regard to the deficit. He said he'd cut the deficit in half by the end of his first term, and what did he do? He passed, or he put forward, the biggest structural deficit in the history of America. Now, here's to your point. What I think is going to be the bigger problem for this president. People in this country don't think that this president's real anymore. He's not genuine anymore. He came to this country, across this country as a candidate, and he promised to be the great uniter, David. He was going to be different. He was going to bring everyone together. He was going to listen to the debt commission. You remember that? But guess what? Now he's going out around America, and you just heard David talk about it, as the great divider.
Well,
he wants to turn this country into the divided states of America. That is the Obama strategy, and you just heard it.
All right, first of all, it is difficult when you have the Senate leader of the Republicans saying that his goal is to make him a one-term president. You got to admit, it's hard to become a uniter in those circumstances.
Well, listen, we're living under the economy we're living under right now. I mean, this absurdity that somehow we're hurting as an economy because of Republicans, it doesn't appeal to anyone's logic because of this. Nancy Pelosi controlled the Congress for 2 out of the 3 years that President Obama's been president. Harry Reid controlled the Senate for 2 of those 3 years. Guess what? We are living under the Barack Obama Democratic policies today.
And the Democratic economy, but there is some good news. 8.6% unemployment now. Here's some of the other good news in the economy as you look at it, particularly can be argued from the Democratic point of view. 140,000 private sector jobs created in November. Sales of existing homes rose 10.4% in October. Federal Reserve reported growth in 11 of its 12 bank regions. The Dow closed up 490 points on Wednesday. Do you not worry, as some conservative commentators have said, that if this trend continues, could be difficult for a Republican nominee revolving their campaign around a troubled economy?
President Obama's poll numbers are worse than Jimmy Carter's poll numbers. For the first time in his presidency, he's waking up this morning wishing that his poll numbers were as good as Jimmy Carter's. And you know why?
That's actually out of context, because you had a spike that Carter had around the Iran hostage issue. Mostly they were lower than where President Obama is.
People's opinions of this president couldn't be any lower. This president is not fooling the American people.
I'm asking about economic data.
And I'm going to respond to data. I mean, we all know, and you put the statistics up before, that the reason the actual percentage of people filing with the Department of Labor went down was because 300,000 people threw up their hands and said, guess what? This economy is so bad that I'm not even going to file a piece of paper with the Department of Labor. Now, we all know that that's true. I mean, the reality is, everything that this president has touched, everything he's touched has not turned out to go very well. Everything he touched has gotten worse. Now, the debt commission, he didn't follow it. Super committee, he's out campaigning. He was nowhere to be found. Healthcare costs. He said that Obamacare would make everything better in regard to healthcare. It would lower the cost of healthcare. Guess what? Costs are higher. Debt is higher. The deficits are higher. This president has been a disaster to this country.
Let me just button up one thing. I mean, we talk about how tough these campaigns can be. You just said a moment ago this president is not real, and that's how Americans are perceiving him as not real. You've heard Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the DNC chair, say that Mitt Romney has no moral core. David Plouffe saying he's got no core. David Alexrod saying the same about Mitt Romney. Fair to say on both sides of the ledger we're headed for a very personal and pretty nasty campaign?
You know what I think? I think people in this country are starving for not necessarily all Republican answers and not Democratic answers. People in this country are starving for real, authentic people to lead this country. And I think that the pageantry, the speeches, all the prepared remarks, the campaign stops that are masqueraded as official White House visits, people are tired. People are tired of this president's promises and his failure to deliver. And guess what? If this president was an employee of any business out there in America, he would have been fired a long time ago.
Let's talk about the field. Herman Cain has suspended his campaign. How do you react to that?
Well, I mean, he has to make that decision for himself, and he did. And you know what? I mean, eventually we're going to be narrowing down the field. I mean, and eventually we're going to have a nominee. So, I mean, these things are pretty common in primaries. The candidates come and go, and
were you
eventually
surprised there Alan West, a conservative, a Tea Party congressman in Florida, said that he had become a distraction? Was that your view?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, I think that he provided a big voice in a debate, but certainly his numbers were falling over the last few weeks, and he was having trouble raising money, and I think it's only natural that if your numbers are falling and you can't raise the money to stay in the race, that you'd get out of the race.
This is what he said at his campaign-style appearance, new headquarters, comes up on the campaign bus only to say he's suspending the race. This is what he said.
Here's the good news. The pundits would like for me to shut up, drop out, and go away. Well, as my grandmother, who lived to be 104 years old, used to say, when somebody was dead wrong, bless their little hearts. I am not going to be silenced, and I am not going away.
Do you agree that the press basically wanted him out of the race? Do you agree, as he charged, that Democrats were behind some of the allegations against him?
You know, I don't know. I mean, I just don't know about that, David. What I do know is that...
Is that
Herman
hyperbole
Cain
by chance?
Well, you know what? I'm going to let Herman Cain speak for Herman Cain, David. I mean, the reality is that he provided a voice in this race. He's out of this race for a lot of reasons that
But he's
we all
not
know
going away.
about.
Do you think he still has a big impact? Does his voice still matter in this campaign?
He might have a big impact, but if you don't, you know, you have to have the money and the campaign and the ability to get your voice out. And so the voice is as big as you're able to get out into the public. I mean, but I do think the bigger issue here is that he provided a voice, as well as the rest of our field, as to what we're going to do to get this country back on track.
Why is the field and why are Republican voters so fickle? That seems to be the takeaway in this campaign so far. You look how many candidates have been up and then down and then up and then down.
Well, I don't think that it's anything unique. I mean, in American politics, I mean, this is a big field. I mean, obviously, when you have a desire within a party to save this country economically from a president that just isn't connecting the dots, you know, this idea that somehow competitive primaries is somehow, you know, bad for a party. Look at all these Republican governors across the Midwest. Every one of them came through a very difficult primary, and guess what? They went into blue states and they won. This president, I mean, Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama nearly gouged each other's eyes out through the end of June before a national convention, and guess what? Barack Obama won pretty easily. He brought a supermajority with him in Congress and 60 votes in the Senate. And now we're living with the consequences of that Democratic leadership, and the American people, by NBC's own polling, have said that they are fed up with this president who says one thing and does another.
Newt Gingrich, who's now a front-runner along with Mitt Romney, has said on this program that in the past, discipline has been a problem for him in his personal life and in his public life. To that point, a lot of critics are looking at his comments this week and saying, are we seeing the return of that Newt Gingrich? This is what he said about children.
Really poor children in really poor neighborhoods have no habits of working and have nobody around them who works. So they literally have no habit of showing up on Monday. They have no habit of staying all day. They have no habit of, I do this and you give me cash. Unless...
Is that the view of the Republican Party? He also called child labor laws truly stupid.
Well, you know, I can't be the referee of all, 21 candidates in the Republican field. I mean, the reality is that these candidates have to speak for themselves. But
you're out there raising money. You are the top party official. The rank and file are going to turn to you and let their voices be heard. Do you think that's the Republican Party putting its best foot forward to challenge President Obama?
Well, I'm not going to dissect, hundreds of hours of footage of every one of these candidates and everything that they say, but what I can tell you is that what Newt Gingrich was referring to in some of those remarks was the fact that under this president, we have more poor people in this country. We have more people on food stamps than ever before. I mean, for a president that portrays himself as being the guy that's going to look out for all economic sectors in this country, including those that are less fortunate, he's provided this country, under his policies, some numbers that are pretty staggering in regard to how many more people that are poor and how many more people are on food stamps.
Do you think that the presidential candidates should decline an invitation from Donald Trump to a presidential debate in Iowa?
You know, we've had a lot of debates, and as you know, some of them have been sanctioned by the Republican National Committee and some of them haven't. I mean, we've had debates with MSNBC as well. But, you know, listen, I think that these are programs that each of these candidates have to decide for themselves whether they're going to compete in. There's strategy involved, whether competing and not competing. Those are things that those candidates need to decide.
I'm not quite sure what you say you've had with MSNBC. You've had it with NBC News where it aired on MSNBC. Are you equating that to a debate with Donald Trump?
Having Rachel Maddow and Ed Schultz, you know, discussing the debate afterwards for 2 hours isn't exactly ideal. But these candidates decide for themselves what arenas they want to participate in.
But do you think it detracts from the seriousness of the debate to have Donald Trump moderating a debate with the presidential candidates?
It's up to the candidates. I mean, I don't make those decisions. What the decisions I make are making sure that we have a functional and operational Republican National Committee.
You must have an opinion.
Right, but as my personal opinion doesn't matter. I mean, what matters is what we need to do as a Republican National Committee to make sure that we're functional and operational and that we do everything we can to make sure that we save this country. And one of the things that we think that we need to do to save this country is defeat Barack Obama.
Newt Gingrich says he's the inevitable nominee. Do you agree with that?
I think it's going to be up to the voters in Iowa and New Hampshire and South Carolina and Florida.
All right, how about a harder one? Do the Packers go undefeated?
I think they do. They beat the Giants today. They're going undefeated, and I think they're going to the Super Bowl.
I mean, it's unbelievable. You're not the football commissioner, but you're willing to give me your opinion on that.
You guys are going to have the cheese heads coming out of your ears pretty soon.
That'll be fine. Chairman Priebus, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.